Hi everybody, welcome to Picayune Conversations. This is Calvin. I'm going solo a little bit today, and I want to talk to with you about this idea of emotional scurvy, which I know is kind of a gross, that's a gross phrase to use, but I want to kind of unpack the idea of what emotional scurvy is. This is something that, honestly, this is a metaphor that I came up with in a session with a client really earlier today. And I think it's a compelling idea, and it was as much a challenge to me as it was to my client during the session. And so I wanted to share this with folks. Hopefully it will be of some help. Okay, so in essence, I want us to talk about wants and needs, okay? I don't think that wants and needs are the same thing. And I think it's important that we make the distinction between those things. Even like in my parenting with my kids, I had this little rule. And by the way, when I say rule, it's not really iron-fisted. It's more, it's almost like a little game that I play with the kids in order to help plug in their brains to this idea that there's a distinction between a want and a need. And okay, so what'll happen is, right, they'll say, I need some ice cream. I need some. And of course they don't. They want some ice cream, and it's perfectly understandable that they want ice cream. It's not bad that they want ice cream. But this little thing, right, that I'm like, oh, I have this thing where when people say that they need something, when really what it is that they want it, well, then my answer is immediately no. And it's not to be withholding or to be cruel. It's to compel them to think, oh yeah, like I don't really need that. I just want it. And so they say, oh, Dad, I want some ice cream. To which, of course, I can be responsive, and sometimes, hopefully as often as possible, my answer to that question can be yes, or to that assertion can be yes. Of course, I'd love to give you some ice cream. Anytime that ice cream is not going to be a curse to my child, either for their health or for their sleep or for something else, to rotting out their teeth or something like that, I want to say yes to them. Yeah, they want ice cream. Great. Wonderful. So do I. Anyways, I'm giving that example to say there's this distinction between wants and needs, and it's a really important one. Now, here's where things get a little bit complicated, is that sometimes the way in which we define a need is that we say, well, am I going to die if I don't have it? And that's, because this is such a complicated question of how do we distinguish between a want and a need, I think it's understandable that we go to kind of the most elemental, most primal thing that you can fall back on, which is just survival imperative. Am I going to die if I don't have this thing? Well, no, and so maybe I don't need it. And there, right in there, I think there's this little error that we make. And it has to do with time scale. Okay, and here's where we get to the idea of scurvy. Okay, so for those of you who don't know and have maybe only just heard about scurvy in some pirate movie or in a pirate song, a funny pirate song, scurvy actually, like, it is a thing. And I'm not a medical professional. I don't really know all that much about scurvy, except for this, that what scurvy is, in essence, is a severe deficiency in vitamin C. Okay, the stuff that we get out of oranges and lemons and limes and other kinds of citrus fruits and I'm sure other stuff too that I can't speak particularly well on. But we got to have vitamin C, yeah? Or we get scurvy. So the thing is that if I think about, oh, well, I need vitamin C. And then I think to myself, well, I mean, Calvin, are you going to die if you don't have some vitamin C right now? No. I'm going to be fine if I go a day or a couple days, or if I go 4 or 5 days without any vitamin C, I'm probably not going to get scurvy. But there is and so then maybe what I do, right, is I say, oh, I want vitamin C. I want it. I don't really need it. It's just this preferential thing, but that's really not true. if we stretch out the time, the time scale that we're looking at, I have to have it. I must have it. And so sometimes I think what happens, so this is the metaphor, right? Is that when we're talking about emotional scurvy, what we're saying is that we have been deprived of a legitimate need that we do have. It actually is a legitimate need that we have, but we've deprived ourselves of it over such a long time scale that now it becomes a problem. So here's how I see this showing up in people's lives day to day is, they say, well, I'd really like to go hang out with my friends, but I've got all these other responsibilities. I mean, I've got work and I've got kids and I've got a spouse and I've got this home project that needs to get done. And well, I need to call my mother and I need to, fill in the blank. All good responsibilities, all very real responsibilities, ones that I would not criticize somebody for wanting to fulfill. There's no issue with that. But so then what they say is, well, I'm not going to keel over dead if I don't go see my friends. It would just be really nice to go see friends. And you know what? If we are looking at that question through the time scale of a 24-hour period of time, well, by God, that's true. You're not going to keel over dead if you don't spend time with your friend, out doing something fun. That's true. Now, if we take that 24-hour segment of time and we just iterate that over and over and over and over and over, where we're saying, I want to spend time with friends, but I don't need to spend time with friends. And we copy and paste that process over the course of a month, over the course of 3 months, over the course of 6 months, over the course of a year, you are going to have emotional scurvy. You're going to have emotional scurvy. You are not getting a fundamental emotional nutrient. Human beings are a social species. We do not thrive in isolation. We do not thrive without friendship. It just and there are piles and piles of research that we have now. This is actually really cool. I'm so glad that the scientific community we've really gotten interested over the past, decade or so about the impacts of social isolation, of friendlessness, of estrangement from other people, and the effects of that, even on a physiological level. I'm not even talking a psychological level. I'm talking on a physiological level, are immense. I mean, it is emotional scurvy. And so here's what, in essence, why I'm wanting to share this idea with you. I think that a lot of people who are really principled people and are conscientious and are responsible and are dedicated to ideas of service to others, and of self-sacrifice and of self-control and of, not, having a character trait in which we do not just indulge whatever we want all the time, that are, where we're not petulant. By the way, these are wonderful traits to have as a person. These are truly magnificent things to have. I think that people who are wired that way are very, very susceptible to something like emotional scurvy. Because what they will end up doing over the course of time is that they'll say, well, I would like to do this, but there are all these other needs and there's all these other responsibilities. And so I will forego what I want in order to take care of what's necessary. And again, I don't think that there's anything particularly awful about that. I think that is actually what a life of service to others requires. I think that that's what it means to be a contributing pro-social member of a community or of society at large. So it's not that there's anything particularly bad about that, but then somehow we also need to build up this skill set and this muscle of saying, okay, I can go without this vitamin C today. I can go out without this nutrient, without indulging in this thing that I want. I can do that today. But if I were to continue doing this in perpetuity, what is going to happen to me? And sometimes, by the way, okay, like if I want a sports car, okay, the reality is that if I'm 37 years old, if I spend the next, let's call it 50 years, and I never have a sports car, I'm really gonna be okay. Like, my life in no way is going to be meaningfully worse for not having a sports car, okay? And I think that I do think that, I mean, unless you are just a really, you've just been brainwashed by capitalism and consumerism, and, you have a serious case of affluenza, I think everybody kind of intuitively understands that my life is going to be okay without a sports car. I think also there is something in us that intuitively understands that if I go the next 50 years without having some fun with friends on occasion, friends that, people that I enjoy being around and that enjoy being around me and that I can connect with and have fun with and goof around with and be silly with and feel safe with, I think we also intuitively understand that that is going to be catastrophic. That is not going to go well. And if that idea sounds a little bit crazy to you, please reach out to me. I won't lecture you, but I want to just have a conversation with you to, first of all, understand where you're coming from, and then to let you know a few ideas that I have about that you can either accept or not, and that, that's fine. I'm not here to force you. But I think that this is a powerful idea, because if we can slow down and say, all right, I don't need this today, but I do need this, we can treat some of the needs that we have not as these selfish, self-centered kind of indulgences, or just, me having my druthers or something like that, but rather that we really could take care of ourselves. And here's, by the way, why that's important. And I've talked about this some, I think, on the podcast. I've certainly talked about it in books and writing that I've done. But I think we also have this idea that self-care is selfish, and that it's somehow this thing apart from care for others. And I want to make really, really clear, it is not at all. When we do not take care of ourselves, what ends up happening is that we, over time, dramatically compromise our ability to contribute to and help other people. We become ill. We become weak, and I don't mean that in like a shamey way. I mean that just in a descriptive way. We become weak. We become malnourished, and that's both emotionally or maybe other ways. And we just show up as this kind of, and this, we become intensely resentful of others. Internally, maybe externally, we're just engaging in these, constant acts of service toward other people. But internally, we're saying, God, nothing ever gets done unless I do it. And, nobody will ever do this for me. It's just if I want something to happen, I have to do it. I'm always out there helping people. Who's looking out for me? Who's helping me? And we become these intensely resentful people. And that is not a favor to other people. That eventually what that's going to become is this kind of cancerous influence both on us, but then also on our community that's around us. And so self-care is not merely this selfish act. I'm open to the possibility that there is such a thing as selfish behavior that we would label as self-care. I'm open to that. But what I'm saying is that as a concept, it is not selfish to take care of yourself. You have to do that, in part because the community needs you. The community needs your contributions. And if you are so ill and malnourished and unhealthy and just a wilted version of yourself, you are never going to offer to the community the contributions that the community needs you to offer. And so I want us to just be aware of the reality of emotional scurvy, that yes, there are things that in a 24-hour segment of time, yes, you don't need it. You're right about that. But if we stretch out the timeline, we see, no, you do need that. This is a legitimate, basic human need that you have, that if you neglect it, you are going to be unhealthy, and that's going to affect you negatively, and it's also going to affect your community in a negative way. So get your vitamin C. Okay, it doesn't have to be every day all the time. You don't have to every time you get a hankering for an orange. You don't have to be chomping one down. But by God, let's make sure we get some citrus in your diet on an emotional level, where you are doing things like hanging out with friends, where you are getting some rest, where you are doing something fun, where somebody else is taking care of you and attending to your wounds and your hurts and your sore spots and your tender spots. This is very important. I will give you one very simple example of this that I think is crucial. One of the things that happens a lot with people who have a partner or a loved one, a family member perhaps, who is really not doing well, perhaps they're ill, something like that, there is this level of urgency and importance in taking care of this other person that somebody can just go and go and go, and they do not take very good care of themselves because they're caring so much for this other person. Look, I have a lot of empathy for people who are in that situation where there's this kind of question like, well, what else are you supposed to do? Sometimes you just have to kind of gird up your loins and self-sacrifice and do what's necessary, because you can't have this other person just die or whatever. And I think that is really very fair. And I also think that if in the background there's this awareness of, hey, I can feel this emotional scurvy coming on. There's some stuff that I need. It's not just that I want it. This is not my preference. This is not about my comfort. This is a basic human need that is being neglected right now. Then there's something where perhaps we're just a little bit more likely to ask for some help, to be bold and courageous in asking for some help and attending to what's going on, rather than constantly marginalizing these alarm bells that are going off inside of us saying, hey, something's not right. You really need this. Don't you want to get some rest? Don't you want to take a nap? Don't you want to get a massage? Don't you want to whatever down the line? So I really encourage you, particularly if you are a person who is dispositionally given to serving others, to engaging in acts of self-sacrifice in order to help other people, therapists, you better be listening here. I really like you for you to consider, hey, could it be that I am in some way, shape, or form depriving myself of some basic human needs that I have, and that I might be developing a case of emotional scurvy? And if not, whether you are or whether you're not, what are some things that I could do to put in place to make sure that it's a little bit less likely that something like that happens to me? I know that I'm going to be doing some of that thinking over the next few days. I'm really thankful to my client who helped me to learn a little bit more about this in our session today, and I wanted to extend that out to you so that you could learn from it as well. So hope this has been helpful and not too gross. I didn't get into all the details of what scurvy looks like, in part because I didn't want to gross everybody out. You can look that up if you want. It's pretty gross and will intensify and probably strengthen the metaphor. So do that if you'd like. Until next time, thank you so much for listening, and hope to talk to you again soon. Bye now.